Welcome, everyone. Today, we're doing a working engineer's deep dive into gradient descent, specifically the 3 variants you'll run into in almost every training pipeline you touch: batch gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent, and mini-batch SGD. Here's the framing for the next 18 minutes. Just use Atom is a perfectly fine default, but it quietly glosses over a decision that's still happening underneath every optimizer: how much data backs each gradient estimate. That one choice, a single example, a mini batch, or the entire dataset, determines how noisy your training is, how much memory you need, how well your training loop maps onto GPU hardware, and ultimately how long it takes to get to a trained model. We'll build one shared mental model for all 3 variants, walk through a real, configurable implementation, compare the trade-offs with actual numbers, look at a well-known large batch case study, and close with the adaptive optimizers that are built directly on top of mini-batch SGD. This is pitched at ML engineers and applied researchers who already know what a gradient is and want the production reality underneath it. Let's start with why this decision matters more than it looks like it should. Here's the reframe I want you to leave this section with. Batch GD, SGD, and mini-batch SGD are not 3 unrelated algorithms. They're the same update rule. Theta gets updated by subtracting the learning rate times the gradient of the loss, evaluated over a differently sized subset of the training set, which we'll call B. That's it. That one knob, the size of B, governs gradient accuracy, per-step compute cost, and how well your training loop maps onto GPU hardware. To make that concrete, on a 1,000,000 example dataset, the per-step compute cost can span roughly 6 orders of magnitude between SGD, where B is just one example, and full batch gradient descent, where B is the entire dataset. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between a training step that takes milliseconds and one that takes minutes. So here's the question this whole deck is really answering. Given your dataset size, your hardware budget, and a convergence target, which gradient estimate and which batch size gets you to a trained model the fastest? Let's build the mental model that lets us answer that precisely. This is the one equation I want you to hold on to for the rest of the talk. Theta at the next step equals theta now, minus the learning rate times the gradient of the loss with respect to theta evaluated on B. Every variant we talk about today is this exact same line, only B changes. Full dataset, that's batch. One sample, that's SGD. Some batch of K samples, that's mini-batch. Now, look at the diagram. This is parameter space, drawn as a contour plot. Think of it like a topographic map of the loss landscape, with the true minimum sitting at the center. Watch the 3 colored paths. The teal path is batch gradient descent. It's smooth and nearly direct because every single step uses the exact gradient computed over the entire dataset. No noise, no wasted motion, but each of those steps is expensive. The violet path is SGD. It zigzags aggressively because each step's gradient is estimated from just one noisy example. The direction is right on average, but any individual step can point almost anywhere. Cheap steps, noisy direction. And the gold path, mini-batch, sits right in the middle. Enough examples per step to average out most of that noise, but few enough to keep each step cheap and, critically, parallelizable on modern hardware. Here's the insight that's easy to miss. That noise in the SGD path isn't purely a cost. Empirically, it acts as an implicit regularizer. It can actually help the model avoid overfitting to sharp, narrow minima. That's part of why pure batch gradient descent is rarely used in deep learning, even on problems where you'd have the compute budget to run it. Let's translate these 3 paths into the literal pipelines that produce them. All 3 lanes here share the exact same 3-stage shape. Pull a source of examples, compute a gradient, apply an update. The only thing that changes lane to lane is the size of that source. Batch gradient descent, on top, the source is the entire dataset, all n examples, which means you get exactly 1 parameter update per epoch. That update is statistically exact, but expensive to produce. Mini-batch SGD, in the middle, the source is a fixed size batch, B examples at a time, commonly anywhere from 32 up to several thousand, depending on your model and your hardware. That gives you n over B updates per epoch, and this is the shape almost every deep learning framework's default training loop assumes. Stochastic gradient descent, on the bottom, one example at a time, producing n updates per epoch, nearly free to compute individually, but each one is noisy. Why does update frequency matter operationally? More frequent updates mean more chances for the loss to react and adjust, but also more chances for instability if your learning rate isn't scaled to match. And here's a practical note from production systems. In practice, mini-batch almost always means a batch shaped to saturate GPU memory and parallel compute. Batch size is very often chosen by hardware fit first, and statistical considerations second. Then the learning rate gets tuned around that constraint, not the other way around. Now let's see this exact pipeline as executable code.
Here's an 18-line type-annotated training step function in Python. I want you to notice something specific about it. The function signature never mentions batch, mini-batch, or stochastic anywhere. It just takes a batch, a tuple of arrays of whatever size happens to be handed to it. That's the key production insight of this whole deck. The gradient descent variant isn't a property of the optimizer function. It's a property of what the data loader hands it. Walking through it briefly, lines 7 and 8 guard against an empty batch, a surprisingly common production bug when a data loader's shuffling or sharding logic has an off by 1 error. The highlighted block, lines 10 through 12, is the whole story. Compute gradients returns the mean gradient over the batch axis. Swap in the full dataset and you have batch GD. Swap in a single example and you have SGD. Anything in between is mini-batch. The update loop at the bottom is a plain vectorized subtraction. No momentum, no adaptive scaling, by design. So the trade-offs we're about to discuss are visible without an optimizer masking them. In real frameworks like PyTorch or JAX, this gets fused into a JIT-compiled program or autograd traced call, but the underlying shape, gradient over a batch axis, subtract, return, never changes. Understanding this primitive is exactly what lets you debug a custom training loop when the framework's abstraction leaks. With the mechanics settled, let's compare what changing B actually costs you and what it buys you. This table is the one I'd screenshot. 5 rows, 3 columns, and it's the fastest way to reason about batch size in an actual project. Gradient estimate moves from exact for batch GD to increasingly noisy for mini-batch and then SGD. But remember, exact doesn't automatically mean better outcome, since some of that noise is doing useful regularization work. Updates per epoch is inversely related to batch size. 1 for batch, n over b for mini-batch, n for SGD. And this is the number that most directly drives wall clock training time on real hardware. Memory footprint is often the deciding factor in practice. Batch GD's full dataset memory requirement is simply infeasible once your dataset outgrows accelerator memory, which is the practical reason it's rare in modern deep learning, independent of any theoretical argument. GPU parallelism is where mini-batch wins outright. Matrix multiply hardware is built for batched operations, so a batch of 256 examples is often barely slower per step than a batch of 32, which makes mini-batch the clear winner on throughput per dollar. And typical use case, batch GD still shows up in convex optimization and small tabular problems. SGD, in the strict single example sense, shows up in genuinely online or streaming settings. One terminology note: when engineers say SGD in a deep learning context, they almost always mean mini-batch SGD. Watch for that overload when you're reading papers or documentation. Choosing the batch size is only half of this. Next, how you keep training stable once you've picked one. 4 quick practical patterns here. 2 tips, 2 warnings. First tip, momentum smooths the zigzag. Accumulating an exponential moving average of past gradients, classical momentum or Nesterov, lets SGD and mini-batch updates average out noise across steps, not just within a single batch. This is often the single highest leverage change you can make to a noisy training loop. Second tip, linear learning rate scaling plus warm-up. When your batch size goes up by some factor k, scaling your learning rate by roughly that same factor keeps the expected parameter movement per epoch constant. Pair that with a short warm-up period, so you don't destabilize training in the first few steps at that higher rate. Now the 2 warnings, and they're really the same failure mode viewed from opposite directions.
small batch plus a learning rate tuned for a large batch equals divergence. The noise in a small batch's gradient gets amplified instead of averaged out, and loss can blow up. Large batch plus a stale, unscaled learning rate equals wasted compute. You get smoother convergence, but far slower. You're paying for more GPUs and getting diminishing returns per epoch. The practical takeaway: learning rate and batch size are coupled hyperparameters. Tuning one without the other is a very common source of why won't this converge debugging sessions. A frequent real-world version of this bug: doubling your GPU count and therefore your effective global batch size through data parallelism without touching the learning rate config. Training still runs, it just converges to a worse final loss in the same number of epochs. Let's see these exact techniques applied at real production scale.
This is one of the most cited large batch training results in the field. Goyle and colleagues at Facebook AI, published in 2017, Accurate Large Mini-Batch SGD. They trained ResNet 50 on ImageNet using a global batch size of 8,192, spread across 256 GPUs, and matched the accuracy of much smaller batch single GPU training in roughly an hour instead of days. Here's how the architecture works, and it's exactly the pattern from the previous slide, applied at scale. This is data parallelism. The model is replicated on every one of those 256 GPUs, and the dataset is sharded, so each GPU computes its own local mini-batch gradient completely independently. Then comes all reduce. The local gradients from every worker are summed and averaged across all 256 of them, producing a single gradient that's equivalent to that much larger effective batch, without any single GPU ever having to hold all 8,000 plus examples in memory at once. The updated parameters are then broadcast back out to every worker, so the next step starts synchronized. And notice, this is the linear scaling rule and warm-up from the last slide, just applied at real scale. The base learning rate is scaled up proportionally to that 256 times increase in effective batch size, then ramped up gradually over the first several epochs. One practical note if you're ever debugging something like this yourself: at this scale, the all-reduced communication step is usually the bottleneck, not compute. As GPU count grows, that sync step can start to dominate wall clock time, unless your interconnect, NVLink InfiniBand, keeps pace. That's why hardware topology and batch size get co-designed together in practice, not chosen independently. That's the production reality. Now let's look at where this is heading. Here's the through line for this slide. Batch size is now a tunable hyperparameter, not a fixed choice you set once and forget. Atom and Atom W build directly on top of mini-batch SGD. They add per-parameter adaptive learning rates, derived from running estimates of each gradient's mean and variance. But underneath all of that adaptivity, the batch size decision from this entire deck still applies. Atom doesn't replace it, it sits on top of it. LARS and LAM, layer-wise adaptive rate scaling methods, push effective batch sizes into the tens of thousands by computing a separate trust ratio per layer. That lets them stabilize large batch training in regimes where plain linear learning rate scaling starts to break down. And there's a concept worth knowing by name: critical batch size, formalized by McCandlish and colleagues at OpenAI in 2018. Below your model's critical batch size, adding more data per step speeds up training roughly linearly. Above it, returns diminish sharply, no matter how much hardware you throw at it. That threshold isn't universal. It depends on the model, the data set, and even where you are in training, which is why large-scale training recipes get retuned per model family rather than reused wholesale. A word of caution from production: teams sometimes overinvest in GPU count without ever checking whether they're already past their model's critical batch size. Past that point, the fix is architectural or algorithmic, not more hardware. Let's distill everything we've covered into decision heuristics you can apply directly. 5 things to walk away with. 1. Batch gradient descent gives you the truest gradient, but it rarely scales past small, convex problems. Its full dataset memory cost is usually the disqualifier. 2. SGD's noise isn't purely a cost. It acts as an implicit regularizer, but only when your learning rate is actually tuned to match its variance. 3. Mini-batch is the production default because it maximizes GPU utilization, not because it's the statistically optimal choice. 4.
Scaling up your batch size requires scaling up your learning rate, plus adding warm-up. The linear scaling rule should drive that change, not intuition. And 5, momentum and adaptive optimizers like Atom exist largely to compensate for the very noise that mini-batching introduces in the first place. They don't replace this decision, they sit on top of it. If there's one of these 5 to overemphasize, it's number 4. An unscaled learning rate after a batch size change is, in my experience, the single most common root cause behind a "we scaled up and got worse results" incident. For anyone who wants to go deeper, here's where to go next.
5 references, roughly in order of how I'd read them. Robbins and Monroe from 1951, a stochastic approximation method. This is the historical root of everything we talked about today, decades before deep learning existed. Batu, Curtis, and Nausedel's 2018 survey, optimization methods for large-scale machine learning. The best single bridge between classical convex optimization theory and the large-scale non-convex setting we actually work in. The Goyle paper from our case study, the full write-up, including the exact hyperparameter schedule they used. Kingma and Ba's 2015 Atom paper, if you want to see exactly how those moment estimates interact with the mini-batch gradients we've been discussing. And Goodfellow, Bengio, and Corville's Deep Learning textbook, Chapter 8, the right next stop if you want a structured treatment rather than papers. One honest observation. Most production training instabilities trace back to a hyperparameter interaction that's already documented in one of these 5 sources. They're rarely a genuinely novel problem. That's the full technical arc. Let's wrap up.
So, questions. Anything from any of the 5 sections is fair game. The mental model, the pipeline and code implementation, the trade-off matrix, the large batch case study, or the adaptive optimizer frontier. And if the room needs a prompt to get started, here's a genuinely practical one. At your current dataset size and hardware budget, are you below or above your model's critical batch size? That's a question every ML engineer in this room can actually answer for a project they own right now. One thing I'll say up front, since it's almost always the first follow-up question. So what batch size should I actually use? The honest answer is the largest one your hardware fits, paired with a properly scaled learning rate and warm-up, then tuned empirically from there. There's no universal correct number. Thank you all.